In this video, we're going to introduce and give you a quick overview to the animation view in Unity and walk you through its user interface. Now, in our particular case, as soon as I get this open, you're going to see that we already have some animation. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. If we go under the Window menu, we have animation right here. Of course, it's also Control-6 if you want to bring this up. Now, in my case, again, I have something that has already been animated. You probably won't on your end. I've only thrown something in here so that we have something to look at while we're walking through the interface. I figure this is probably enough to get you where you want to go so that you could use this if you already have a background in using an animation package, such as Max or Maya or Flash.
Right. If you're already familiar with the way a curve editor for animation works in one package, the principles are pretty much the same in all of them.
That's right. So this will just be a basic primer. Now, if on the other hand you're totally new to this kind of thing, don't worry. In an upcoming video, I'll show you how I got to where we are right now. So without any further ado, let's take a look at the interface for the animation window. Starting at the very top, we have the record button. So basically this says, are you animating or aren't you? If this is on, then any changes you make to this object will automatically be recorded and drop down as keyframes so that you can animate between those values.
Right. It works very similar to Auto Key in Maya if you're familiar with that, and I believe Max has a similar feature.
And let's take a look at doing that. What I'm going to do is I didn't really want to go this far, but I will anyway. We'll just, because this is special, and because you guys watching this, you're all special folks. We have a single keyframe already here in place, and notice I have my record button down. So what I'm going to do is drag the time slider forward to about 1 second, and then I'll move my capsule. And as we do that, you'll see that we do get an automatic keyframe dropped, so that if I hit the next button over, which is our play animation, you can see the result. So that actually shows off two of the buttons, one of course being the record button and the other being playback. Now next to this we have the ability to jump forward keyframes and jump backward, which when you only have two keys it looks like they're pretty much doing the same thing. Well, we're not looping, so we can jump forward or we can jump all the way back to the beginning. We can jump to a specific point in the timeline. Now currently we are sampling at a rate of 60 frames a second, and this is based on frames. So if you take a look in the timeline, you'll notice that our other key was set at 1 second, but that is going to be analogous to 60 frames. So you got to keep that in mind. Now, where that sample rate gets set is actually in your animation clip, which you have to even use the animation window. If that is confusing to you, don't worry. We're going to take a look at that when we go through the animation the animation view workflow in a future video. Right now, we're just sticking to the interface itself. Moving along, we have the ability to add a keyframe. So I could, for instance, come right here, and even though I'm not in record mode, so we can drag, say, right about here, and of course that's going to put it right back into record mode. I can click on Add a Keyframe, and you'll see that adds a new keyframe here, which I could then move, and because we're zoomed out so far along our timeline, which I'll talk more about that in a moment, the movement becomes pretty drastic. But now as I play, we have a much scarier looking animation. So again, it's just a quick way that you can drop down keyframes. Now what I'm going to do is stop, and then I'm going to frame back up on all my curves. Now this is something I'll talk about here in just a moment. So I'll just go ahead and bring these up. Don't worry about how I did that. I will explain it in a moment. And we'll just delete out those extra keyframes so that our capsule's not flying around too crazily. Now, we also have the ability to add events as well as keyframes.
Right. This is a more advanced feature, and this ties in with scripting, which we're really not going into in this set.
That's right. But if you have a script controller that is currently, or a script component, excuse me, that is attached to this object, you can call specific functions from within that script using these events. Now, where would that come in handy? Well, if you're animating an object, say, I don't know, maybe a door that opens up. And at some point when the door opens, you want it to have a creak at a particular time. You could say then at that moment of the animation, we want to fire off an event, which is to play this particular sound effect, and then you'll have that happen. And there's also all kinds of more interesting ways you can make use of that as well. And just even opening up the door to scripting really just lends to infinite possibilities.
Yeah, it's just a matter of what your imagination will limit it you to, or whatever the gets called for in your game design. I mean, you literally can do just about anything.
So it's just a nice way to hook scripting into your animation system. Now, from here, we have 2 little drop-downs. These allow us to select any of the various objects we may be animating at the time. Right now, we only see the capsule. And then next to this, we have our animation clips. Now, currently, we have 1 animation clip in place, but just to kind of drive the whole thing home without getting too off the topic of the interface, we will just create a brand new clip, which, let's see, the last one was called MyAnim. I'll call this MyAnim2. And now we can switch between these 2 clips. Now, this clip has no keyframes in it. So if I wanted to create some new keyframes, we could click on the record button, and we could just nudge our capsule right here at our 0 timeline, and that puts an initial keyframe down, and then maybe come up here to 1 second once again and drag the capsule this way. And now, as we drag the time slider, we have some animation. So moving down from here, we have all of the different properties that can be animated. And right now, all we've been animating is position, but you can animate any one of these. We could animate position, rotation, scale. We can even expand the various components that have been attached to this object and animate aspects of those as well. And here's one I'm just going to throw out to bake your noodle if you want something that'll really it's kind of a brain teaser. You can animate the enabled value of the actual animation itself. Now, don't think too hard about that, because there's no reason you'd ever want to do that. I just thought it was funny that you could do it. So now, down from this, we can show all of the different properties, or we can choose to just show the animated ones. So it's just a little tiny button down here on the bottom, an easily overlooked button if you don't know it's already there. So let's just hide away everything but what's already animated, and we can, next to this, control the kind of behavior we're going to get from our animation. Default means it just plays once, and it's done. Now, because we're here inside the animation window, it's just going to continue looping. However, if I close out, so let's stop recording, and let's close the animation window, and hit play, our capsule, well, right now it's ping-ponging back and forth, but let's jump back over to our little animation clip. So let's select this guy, go back into our animation window, and it looks like this was set to ping pong. In fact, it looks like it jumped back over to MyAnim.
Right, because that's the one that it was initially created with. And actually, if you want to look at the capsules in the inspector real quick and slide over, if you look at the animation component, the animation that's associated with it right now is MyAnim. If
That's
we
right.
were to actually select the other one,
we can drag MyAnim2 into this animation component,
Right.
and now if we hit play and take a look, it just plays once and it stops. Now, that ping-ponging one was something, again, that we set up prior to the video, so again, we'd have something to look at, but that is how you swap between your 2 animation clips. You just drag that right out of the project view and into that. But we'll talk more about that in a little bit more depth later on. So let's go back into the animation view, and we're just about done with the interface, but we've come to the most important part, and this is your curve view. This will show you all of your animation curves, and it has some navigation to it that you need to be aware of. If you drag with the middle mouse button, you can pan this view. You can zoom in with the mouse wheel. You can also zoom in by holding down the Alt key and dragging with right mouse. If you hold down Control and drag, I'm sorry, it's Control and your mouse wheel. I kind of lost it. I thought I was in Maya world for just a minute. A little bit of navigation syndrome. If I hold down Control and roll my mouse wheel, you'll notice that I am zooming out right now, but I'm zooming out only horizontally, which if you're totally new to working with animation curves, it may not become instantly apparent why you'd want to do that, but it allows you to keep the values where they are on the graph and zoom out only in time.
Right.
If you hold down Shift and roll the mouse wheel, we're only zooming in value and leaving the time values right where they are. Now, you can do this exact same function by adjusting the 2 sliders on the left side as well as the bottom of your curve view. And right now we're zoomed way out, so it's hard to notice the change of these curves. But if I select any one of the curves over here inside my list, I can tap the F key and frame up on that curve. So if the curve looks like it's a different shape, it's not. It's just we're zoomed into a different factor of it. And that's something, again, that just kind of goes back to working with animation curves. And if you're used to working with animation curves, then, again, this is all old hat to you, and you've seen all this kind of thing before. Now, you can work with these curves a little bit, but I'm going to talk about the intricacies of that in a separate video. The big thing I want to get across here is that you do have a full functioning curve editor right here as a part of the interface of the animation window. You have the timeline up here at the top, which you can drag around to control exactly where your time slider is going to be. And that's pretty much it.
There was one other thing I want to go over. This one kind of might have gotten missed when we were switching between our two animation clips. If you can go back to the default button at the bottom and actually click on it and show the different modes.
That's true. I did overlook it because we were trying to swap things out. Thanks for keeping me in check. Next to show all or show animated, we can choose the type of playback mode we want to use. Now, default is just going to play once and stop. That's just going to be whatever the default happens to be set to. You can actually set that in another place in the editor, but we can set this to just play once. We can set it to loop, so it'll continue to play over and over again. You can set it to ping pong, which means it'll get to the end of the animation curve, and then it'll cycle back and play back over that again and again. Or you can say clamp forever, which is going to keep it at a constant value as it goes off kind of into infinity. Now, let's just go ahead and just set this one to ping pong, and if we take a look in our curve editor, we can see the result of that ping-ponging curve. So this gray version of that same curve just ticking over and over and over again. And let's go ahead and hit play. Now here, I do want to point this out. Inside the animation view, we're not going to see the result of that ping pong because it's really only interested in the keyframes we've put down.
Correct. It's going to go from the first keyframe to the last keyframe. Once it reaches that last keyframe, it's going to go back to the first keyframe and repeat itself.
That's right. So if you're expecting to see this kind of behavior, you won't see it here inside when you're looking at the animation view. But if we stop recording and close this window and once again hit play, then boom, we start ping-ponging just like we were with our other animation clip. So that is a quick rundown of the interface for the animation window. And now from here, we're going to take a look at actually using it a little more consistently from the standpoint of you've never really seen it before. So that's going to wrap things up for this video. Thanks a lot.